Welcome to another deep dive. Today we are exploring the world of Thelema. Now you might have heard of Aleister Crowley, but we're going deeper than those crazy headlines, right? We're going to uncover the core of this system, which, people still practice today. We've got some expert insights here compiled from a variety of sources, so let's dive right in.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? I mean, how Thelema, even though it's over a century old now, it still attracts people who are, looking for
Yeah.
spiritual growth, self-discovery, all that.
Yeah, totally. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's talk about Aleister Crowley himself. I mean, he's often called the Great Beast, which sounds kind of intimidating, right?
Yeah, he did kind of cultivate that controversial image, that's for sure. But to understand Thelema, you got to understand the man behind it.
Okay, so paint a picture for us.
Yeah.
What was Crowley like?
Okay, so Crowley was born back in the late 1800s. Wealthy family, got a prestigious education at Cambridge, but he was always a bit of a rebel, always drawn to the occult. And eventually, well, he just dedicated his life to it.
That's wild. I mean, coming from such privilege to, going after something so unconventional.
He even challenged those big occult groups of his time. Like, he rose through the ranks of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a pretty prominent magical order, but he ended up leaving. He called their rituals verbose and pretentious nonsense. And he wasn't a fan of, their focus on wealth and status, over real spiritual potential.
Wow. So he was outspoken. What did he do if he wasn't down with the Golden Dawn?
Well, he went and found his own organization for, magical training. It was called the Era, pronounced Astrum Argentum, which means silver star.
So how was his approach different?
Well, Crowley was all about a more streamlined system. Like, he condensed practices that usually took, years to learn in the traditional orders and made them, accessible earlier in the era training. He cut through all the fluff, and he emphasized personal experience, something he called scientific illuminism, basically, testing your beliefs through, actual experience instead of just accepting them blindly.
So he wanted to make magic more practical.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did his organization actually work? Was it like the Golden Dawn with those group rituals and hierarchies?
It was different. It was all about individual instruction. You had a mentor, guide, just one student. They didn't have the same social structure as the Golden Dawn.
That's interesting. So it sounds like he was really all about tailoring the training to each person.
Yeah, that focus on personal exploration. It shows up in the main text of Thelema too. It's called Liber al Vel Legis, also known as the Book of the Law.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of this. Wasn't it channeled?
Yeah. Crowley said he received it through a channeled writing experience. It came from an entity named Aiwass, who's connected to the Egyptian god Horus. It lays out, the key principles of Thelema, including that famous or maybe infamous saying, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law."
Oh, yeah, that one. A lot of people get that wrong, don't they? They think it means, do whatever you want without consequences.
Right. But it's not about hedonism at all. Thelema teaches that we each have a true will, like a divine purpose, a path that's just ours. Do what thou wilt is about aligning yourself with that true will and living by it.
So it's more about self-discovery, being authentic. But how do you figure out what your true will even is?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Crowley believed that the key was achieving something called knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel.
Holy guardian angel.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
You can think of it as your higher self, the wisest, most divine part of you. It's not a separate being, it's part of your own consciousness. And all those Oriya practices, the rituals, the meditations, the Kundalini yoga, they're all tools to help you connect with that inner wisdom.
So it's about going, deeper than your personality.
Right. And when you achieve knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel, you get this deeper understanding of your true will. Not as just one decision, but as, the driving force behind all your actions, thoughts, behaviors, your whole life.
Wow, that's intense. You mentioned Kundalini yoga. Now, a lot of folks might be familiar with yoga in general, but Kundalini yoga sounds a little more, intense.
Yeah, it's a specific type of yoga. It focuses on awakening this Kundalini energy, which is this powerful force that's said to reside at the base of the spine. And when it's activated, it can lead to profound spiritual experiences and, big personal transformations.
Okay, so it's not just about physical flexibility.
No, it's about energy and consciousness, that kind of thing.
Right, right. And Crowley believed that Kundalini yoga, when practiced correctly, could be a big part of that self-discovery process, right? That connecting with your true will.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. So it sounds like Thelema is a pretty multifaceted system. Lots to explore here.
It is, and there's even more to unpack. Crowley actually developed specific training tracks within the Oreo to, prepare people for this journey of self-discovery. Should
Yeah.
we get into those next?
Let's do it. This is where it gets really interesting. So Crowley created these training tracks, right? Within the Ori, what can you tell us about them?
Well, he designed 5 tracks, and each one focuses on a different aspect of, like, self-development. You can think of them as like facets of a gem. Each one reflects light in its own way.
I like that. So the first track, what's that all about?
The first one, it's all about mastering those practical magic skills, like learning rituals, working with energies, and developing abilities like astral projection and divination. It's like your toolbox, if you want to be a magician.
So it's the hands-on stuff, right? You learn to work with those subtle forces like the universe and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's about putting theory into practice. Yeah. And gaining direct experience of that magical realm. But it's not just about the outward actions. The second track, that focuses on training the mind.
Makes sense. It's not just about waving wands and chanting spells, right? It's got to be mental discipline and focus too.
Absolutely. So the second track, it's all about cultivating focus, stillness, and receptivity. You do this through things like meditation, visualization, and thought control. It's about mastering your thoughts and emotions, right?
Yeah.
So they don't mess with your magical work.
Mental boot camp for magicians.
That's a good way to put it. You're training your mind to be this powerful instrument for change.
Nice. So then we've got the third track, Kundalini activation. We talked about this a bit before, but what does it actually involve?
So Kundalini yoga, right, uses these specific postures, breath work, and visualizations to awaken that Kundalini energy.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful. Can lead to some like transformative experiences. Heightened awareness. People describe it as this feeling of energy going up the spine, and then you get this sense of bliss and like expanded consciousness.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense. Is it safe?
Well, like anything powerful, you got to approach Kundalini yoga with respect, right?
Sure.
You need guidance from an experienced teacher. Crowley, he thought activating the Kundalini was like super important for spiritual growth, but he always said you need careful preparation and you got to progress gradually.
You don't want to just jump into the deep end.
Exactly. You need that solid foundation for sure. So moving on, the fourth track, it's all about devotional practices. Might seem a bit, I don't know, unexpected in a system that's so big on like individual will. But devotion has a key role in Thelema.
Really? How so? I always thought like devotion was about surrendering to something, higher power.
It can be. But in Thelema, devotion is more about cultivating a deep connection with your true will and those divine forces that support it. Like aligning your heart and mind with your purpose and letting that energy flow through you.
So not blind faith. It's about finding something you truly believe in and really going for it.
You got it. And then finally, we got the fifth track, which is all about psychomagical balancing.
Okay, what's that about?
So this track is all about integration. It's about all the different parts of yourself, right? Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Crowley believed that achieving a balanced state was like essential for the holy guardian angel to really dwell within you.
So you're creating like a vessel, a container for that divine energy of your higher self, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about working through those inner conflicts, your shadows and all that, so that your true nature can shine through. Now, Crowley, he used these symbols, the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, to represent different psychological functions. And this track, you're working with each element to achieve that balance.
Okay, that's really interesting. So these 5 tracks really cover a lot, right? Personal, spiritual development, the whole 9 yards.
They do, and they all work together to prepare you for that ultimate goal of Thelema, which is, of course, to discover and live according to your true will.
Right. So we've been talking a lot about the OA and its training system, but what about Crowley's involvement with the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO? This is where things get a little more controversial, right?
Yeah, the OTO, it's an organization that claims to have like ancient secrets of sex magic. Crowley got really involved, and eventually he became the head of it.
The sex magic, definitely something that gets people talking. What does it actually involve?
So basically, sex magic is about harnessing sexual energy, right, for spiritual and magical purposes. Crowley believed that sex is this powerful force, and you can use it to fuel transformation and connect with the divine.
It's not just about physical pleasure, then.
No, there's a much deeper element to it, a mystical element.
Right, right. So Crowley saw sex as a sacred act.
Yeah, he saw it as a way to tap into that primal creative energy of the universe.
Yep.
And he developed specific rituals and practices to channel that energy for spiritual growth and magical attainment.
I can see why people found this stuff shocking.
He was way ahead of his time in many ways. But his approach to sex magic, it was based on, a deep understanding of these esoteric traditions and the power of the human body.
So how did this fit into his vision for the OTO?
Crowley saw the OTO as this vehicle, for spreading those Thelemic principles and creating a society where individuals could freely express their true will. He thought sexual liberation and spiritual exploration were like super essential for human progress.
That's a pretty radical vision. So he was trying to create a new kind of society.
He was, but it's important to remember his approach to sex magic, it wasn't about just indulging in hedonism or anything. It was about using this powerful force responsibly and ethically.
Right. It's easy to see how this stuff can be misunderstood.
Oh, for sure. Crowley, he always stressed how important rigorous training and preparation are for anyone engaging in sex magic. It's not something to be taken lightly.
Got it. So we've been talking about the theory and the organizations and all that, but I'm curious about like the actual practices that Crowley developed. What are some examples of those key rituals he created or adapted?
Well, Crowley was a prolific writer and ritual magician. Throughout his life, he developed and adapted tons of rituals, taking bits and pieces from different traditions and weaving them into his own unique system.
He was like a master chef of magic.
That's a great way to put it. He saw the value in all that ancient wisdom, but he wasn't afraid to experiment and innovate.
I like it. So what are some of the most well-known rituals associated with Thelema?
Well, you've got the rituals of the pentagram and hexagram, right? They're like foundational practices in a lot of magical traditions, and Crowley adapted them for Thelemic use. He also developed his own variations, like the star ruby and the star sapphire, which incorporate Thelemic cosmology and symbolism and all that.
So these are rituals for like invoking and banishing energies, working with the elements, and creating a sacred space, right?
Exactly. They're essential if you're working with Thelemic magic. Crowley also developed this thing called Liber Reshvel Helios. It's a set of solar adorations designed to align your consciousness with those cycles of the sun.
That seems really beautiful. What's it involve?
It's a daily practice. You invoke these Thelemic versions of Egyptian deities who are associated with different times of day. It's a way to connect with that life-giving energy of the sun and harmonize yourself with the rhythms of nature.
Yeah, precisely. Crowley also created a ritual called the Mass of the Phoenix. It's a Eucharistic ritual, and you consume a cake of light.
A cake of light? Okay, what is that? It's a small wafer. It's made with ingredients like honey and spices, and it represents the divine spark within each of us. And when you consume it, it's a symbolic act of uniting with that divine essence.
Powerful stuff. What about rituals for contacting the holy guardian angel?
Crowley wrote Liber Semek, which is a really complex ritual designed specifically for invoking the holy guardian angel. It's considered one of his most profound works. Gives you detailed instructions on visualization and inner work, all that.
Like a roadmap to that ultimate connection.
You could say that. It's a challenging ritual, but it can lead to profound insights and transformation.
And of course there's Liber XV, the Gnostic Mass, right?
Yeah.
Which is the main public ritual of the OTO. What's that all about?
The Gnostic Mass is it's beautiful, very complex. It brings in elements from all sorts of traditions like Egyptian, Rosicrucian, Masonic. It's all about the union of opposites, masculine and feminine, spiritual and material, individual and divine.
It sounds like a really multifaceted ritual. So what's its purpose?
It's a celebration of life, the universe, a way to connect to the divine and experience the sacredness of existence. It's also a way to transmit those Thelemic principles and create a sense of community among practitioners.
Crowley's magical legacy it's vast. And we've only scratched the surface. But it's clear he was a real innovator, right? Left a mark on the world of occultism.
Oh, he definitely did. And his influence goes way beyond his lifetime, His work still inspires people today.
So what happened to Thelema after Crowley died? Did his followers keep his teachings going?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore next. Crowley's death was definitely a turning point for Thelema, but his legacy didn't end there.
So Crowley died in 1947, and Thelema is, well, it's left without its leader. What happened next? Did it just, I don't know, fade away?
Nope, not at all. Actually, it's kind of amazing. Thelema, not only did it survive, it actually flourished after Crowley died. You had some really dedicated people who stepped up to preserve his teachings and, carry the torch.
Sounds like those ideas, they had some real staying power, right? Even without the founder there. Who were some of the key figures in keeping Thelema going?
One of the most important was Karl Germer. He was Crowley's chosen successor, inherited the leadership of both the EDA and the OTO. Germer was like totally devoted to Crowley, worked super hard to make sure those writings didn't get lost.
So he was like the guardian of Crowley's legacy.
Yeah, exactly. He was really key in getting some of Crowley's most important works published, like Magick without Tears and the Book of Thoth. They offered like more, I don't know, accessible explanations of those Thelemic principles.
That makes sense. Without those books, who knows? Crowley's teachings might have stayed hidden in obscure journals and private collections. Were there others who helped spread Thelema after Crowley?
Oh yeah, definitely. Jane Wolfe, she was a silent film actress, and she had lived and studied with Crowley at his Abbey of Thelema in Sicily. She became a big name in the American Thelemic scene.
The Abbey of Thelema? It sounds pretty magical. I bet there were some wild stories from back then.
Well, Jane Wolfe, she kept these detailed diaries, give you little glimpses into daily life at the Abbey. It was like this mix of, intense magical training, creative expression, and, well, got to have some drama, right?
I can imagine. Sounds like quite the crew. What about Jack Parsons? I've heard his name connected with Thelema, but he was a bit controversial, wasn't he?
Jack Parsons, oh, he was a fascinating guy, a brilliant rocket scientist, like one of the pioneers of the American space program, but also deeply into Thelema and the OTO. He even led the Agape Lodge for a while.
Wow, a rocket scientist and a magician. He was really living that Thelemic ideal of pushing boundaries. But what about the controversy?
Parsons, he was known for his, let's say, unorthodox approach to Thelema. He liked to experiment. And his personal life, well, it was colorful.
Sounds like a life full of passion, both in science and magic.
He definitely lived life to the fullest. And his writings, especially his essay, Freedom is a Two-Edged Sword, they offer some really insightful reflections on, freedom, responsibility, the challenges of living a Thelemic life in a complex world.
So it seems like there was this real sense of community back then, right, among those early Thelemites. Were there any other important figures who contributed to the movement?
Phyllis Seckler was another key figure. She worked with Jane Wolfe to establish Thelema in California. She founded the College of Thelema, and it played a big role in preserving and passing on Crowley's teaching.
She wanted to make Thelema more accessible.
Exactly. She also worked with Grady McMurtry, who he'd later become a pivotal figure in the revival of the OTO back in the 1970s.
A revival. What happened to the OTO after Crowley and Germer died?
The OTO, they ran into some challenges and conflicts in the years after Crowley's death. But Grady McMurtry, he stepped in, said he had a charter from Crowley himself authorizing him to, rebuild the orbit.
Like a knight bringing them back. Did he succeed?
He did. Under McMurtry, the OTO, they had this huge resurgence, became a legally recognized organization, strong international presence, and it's still going strong today.
Yeah.
They're the custodians of Crowley's literary estate, and they offer initiations into their system of Thelemic degrees.
It's incredible, right? Thelema's gone from this kind of obscure movement to a well-established spiritual tradition. What do you think explains that? Why is it still so relevant?
I think there are a few things. At its core, Thelema, it offers this path of self-discovery, spiritual empowerment. It encourages people to, question, explore, forge their own unique paths.
Yeah, that message of like personal autonomy, taking responsibility for yourself, it seems to really speak to people these days.
Totally. Thelema, it gives you the tools to take control of your own life, figure out your true potential, and create a life that's aligned with your values and your aspirations.
It's not about following dogma or blindly accepting someone else's truth. It's about finding your own truth, right?
Yes.
Through your own experience and exploration.
Yes. And that message, that self-reliance and responsibility, I think it's more relevant now than ever.
It's been an incredible journey exploring Thelema and the life of Aleister Crowley. I mean, from that controversial persona to the depths of his teachings, it's been fascinating.
It really has. And that tapestry, it's still being woven,
Mhm.
all around the world. People are engaging with Thelema, finding their own meaning and inspiration.
So, for anyone listening who, might be intrigued by Thelema, what advice would you give them? Where should they start?
Start with Crowley's writings,
Yeah.
his books, especially, Magic Without Tears and Liber ABA. They lay out the principles really clearly. You can also check out the websites of organizations like the OTO to see how they interpret Thelema, what they're up to these days.
And remember, it's a personal journey, right? Self-discovery. Take what speaks to you, leave what doesn't. And always, always be critical. Use your own judgment.
Well said. Thelema is all about questioning, challenging assumptions, and finding your own path. So embrace that spirit of exploration. You never know what you might find.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive into Thelema. It's been really enlightening. And for all of you listening, may your exploration of Thelema, or any path you choose, lead you to a deeper understanding of yourselves and, well, the mysteries of the universe.